Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for making some time for the LEAP orientation. I'm really excited to have you all here. I am Marcela Rojas Salas. I'm one of the project managers here at Valor. I use she, her pronouns, and you'll see me almost at every single webinar or small group unless I have something else to do on another project that I can't have someone else yeah, so I'm going to be your guide. I'll be the person who will be answering all your questions, anything about the syllabus, anything about the Pay It Forward project, anything about scheduling or the content that you're learning about or the connections you're wanting to make with each other. I'm here to support you all. So I see everyone is dropping a line in the chat, introducing themselves. Thank you for doing that. We'll have some time to actually get to know each other, but I started doing this orientation just because I wanted to help people understand the different layers of the project and help build some expectations around what you'll be participating in over the next 9 months. So welcome, everybody. And before I get started any further, I'm just going to say this project is supported by the Office on Violence Against Women. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this presentation are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Justice. And just a little bit of housekeeping. You all are welcome to use the text chat to ask questions. I'm going to try to get through all of the content first and then answer questions. But if something comes up, feel free to drop it in the chat and I will get to it when I can. I'm going to have some polling questions that will pop up for you all. And if anyone is dialing in from a phone, just a reminder that *6 will unmute you and then *6 will mute you again. So if anyone needs to use that, now you know. And then if you were not here right when we started, the slides and recording will be available. I sent you all the LEAP Cohort 10 materials folder. So everything that goes on in this cohort will be shared in that folder and you will have available to you forever as long as Google exists. So that's where you can find things. Just a quick note on the Google Drive though, if you don't have a Gmail account or a Google account attached to your professional email, absolutely, you're welcome to use your personal email. So if you're having trouble accessing it because you don't have a Google account, just let me know and I can add another email. So feel free to email me. Yes, and I'm so glad you all got your care package. If someone didn't get their care package, please email me. I hope that you did get it, but if not, we can try to send you another one. Usually they get to you, but you never know. And then I already introduced myself, but you all know me. I'm Marcella. Valena is going to be joining us shortly. She's going to help me with dropping links in the chat because this is a very link heavy webinar. I'm not usually like that. But I do just have a bunch of things to share with you all. So Valena will be here shortly. Crossing my fingers. I think she's tied up in another meeting. So thank you all. You've already started putting your names and organizations in there, your pronouns, your geographical locations. The other thing I did not ask folks to do is to let me know how many years of experience you have in the movement, both volunteer and professional. Later on, I'm going to add that all up and see how many years of experience we all have together. I think it's just a way to recognize our wisdom, our knowledge, our experience as a group, and to have that number. It's usually upwards of like 100 years, usually like 200 or 300. So I will do I will count all of that up later on and send it in a newsletter just so we can celebrate that and see that right in front of us. So thanks everybody for dropping that in the chat. Um, And I always get my numbers mixed up. So if you all are still counting, I am too. I'm like, well, I did some work in college and grad school. I'm like, what counts? So it all counts. I will say that for myself and you all. I started in the field back when I was in college doing prevention education at my college and talking to my peers and then I went to grad school and started working at the Women's Center and had um, a lot of experience doing training around supporting survivors on college campuses. And then I moved to Oregon. I'm from California and I moved to Oregon and I did some work up there with a local dual agency culturally specific. So I was mostly working with youth, Latino youth, Latinx youth, up in Portland, doing prevention education, and then at the same time also doing case management with survivors, mostly immigrant survivors up in Oregon. So that's my background, and now I'm here at Valor. I've been at Valor for 4 years, going on 5. This is my main project, but I also work on some projects focusing on youth who work in detention settings. So that's my background, just so you all know, like what does Marcella do? What's her background? And I'm excited to also learn a little bit more about you. I feel like I have the privilege of knowing a lot about you since I've read your cover letters many times and interviewed you and asked you lots of questions and been talking about you all with my colleagues. So appreciate you sharing all that. And um, I will count that up later on today. This is one of our first poll questions. I like to ask this question. I will just up front let you all know you're probably going to get a lot of newsletters and emails from me. Some of them might be repetitive, but it's just I want to make sure that people are in the know on what's happening in the day-to-day, week to week. I know you all are super, super busy, so I just really want to make sure that you know what's coming up. You have the newsletter. I know you'll be able to take a look at that, but we're not in college anymore. The syllabus works sometimes, but I think having the reminders help. But feel free to let me know if like the email group is more conducive to you or the newsletter is better for you. Um, I will try to make sure to give updates on Zoom as, our webinars and small groups start. Um, I'm also always available on the phone or Zoom if something comes up for you all and you want to share that with me. People have reached out to me just to let me know, like, hey, I'm going through a transition, I'm being promoted, or I'm moving into a new organization, or shifting, to a field adjacent to this field. Am I still able to be in the cohort? No matter what happens and changes happen throughout this cohort, you are always welcome to stick with us and stick all the way through the cohort. But if you're wanting to chat with me about transitions, I'm happy to chat with you about that or anything else that may come up throughout the course of the cohort. So I'm also checking checking the chat. I'm seeing other folks say text. Yeah, I'm wondering what kind of text you're talking about. Like, do you mean like, hey, like the webinar's coming up, I haven't seen you register, or like what do folks want to me to communicate via text? That's actually not something that people have given me consent to do. Yeah. Group text of updates. So okay, so like having like a group chat on WhatsApp or Signal or something like that. Yeah. Okay, let me think about that because I also maybe we have a group chat that people opt into because I know some people are like, I love a group chat, and then some people are like, you are blowing up my phone. And I need some boundaries around that. So let me make a note of that, and I will probably follow up with you about that later on this week or next week. Okay, I see. Check your email reminders, reminder text that people cannot reply to. Okay, so I'm sending you all texts, but people aren't responding in the group chat. Okay, that's very interesting. Got you. Yes, Don, the poll did say if others select specify in chat. Yes, please specify in the chat if there's anything else. Alrighty, well, thank you all. I'm seeing a lot of people say email and newsletter, and a few people say text or phone call and Zoom. So thank you for that. Duly noted. Okay. All right, so what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to be talking about LEAP history and syllabus just to help situate you and celebrate the fact that you all are part of LEAP cohort 10. There were many, many people that led this project before me that have a lot of rich history, and I will try to do them justice. We're going to talk about the syllabus as well. I won't go through the entire syllabus. That would take a lot of time, but we'll do a brief overview. And then we're going to talk about Pay It Forward project expectations. And this is not the only time we'll talk about the Pay It Forward project. So again, this will be sort of a brief overview. And then we'll talk about podcast and blog participation opportunities. One thing that I absolutely love about this project is that I get to uplift your experiences, the work that you're doing, highlight your successes, highlight the challenges that you all experience in the field. Um, if you haven't listened to the podcast yet, I highly recommend that you listen to it. It is a place where I feel like we get to talk about things that we don't get to talk about at work. Um, Sometimes I feel like it's more of a conversation with friends as opposed to colleagues. And so, um, yeah, I hope helps you feel seen. I hope it makes you feel understood, and I hope you get some nuggets of truth and things that you can bring into your own work. And then we'll have some time for you all to meet each other in smaller groups and some time for questions. So I'm gonna pause there and see if anybody has any questions. If they're like, this isn't on the agenda, but I wanted to chat about that with you or as a group. No. Alrighty. Well, if you change your minds, let me know. Maybe something will come up. All right, so LEAP history and syllabus. So it's actually almost been 10 years since this report was released. It's called the Women of Color Leadership Report, a look at the experiences of women of color executives, specifically in the anti-violence against women's movement. And it was developed with Valor Calcasa at the time and the Women of Color Network. And various women of color across the United States were interviewed about their experiences being in executive leadership in the field. And you'll notice a lot of what you see on here has not changed. Um, and so LEAP was really trying to make an intervention in what we were hearing in this report. Folks were hearing that they had a lack of mentors, or they were saying that they had a lack of mentorship. They were experiencing a lot of tokenization. And unfortunately, when I interview people, I hear this is still happening all the time. And it looks different, I think, across the country, right? So I think I'm from the West Coast, and I feel like there's a lot of privilege in being in the West Coast. Talking to folks in the Midwest, talking to folks in the South. You all are experiencing something entirely different that I have not experienced before. So I really appreciate learning from you all and the ways that you navigate whiteness in the workplace in particular, and how a predominantly white field has been impacting folks' mental health and their ability to move throughout the field. So a piece of the puzzle in response to the lack of mentorship and the tokenization is that we provide coaching within this cohort. And so that's a big piece, I think, that a lot of people end up talking about, those two issues in coaching. But we also provide training. We're also making an intervention around program management and development. Um, we don't do grant writing and professional writing just because there's limitations around, doing this work in under federal funding. But the program management and development, though, there's certainly going to be training on that. And then there was this deep need for connection among leaders of color that are often underrepresented in the field, or in particular, underrepresented in executive leadership roles or management roles, and just feeling really isolated in your own organization. Um, and feeling like the leadership models just were not aligning with where our own identities align with. So I'm hoping that folks are able to see each other as role models and mentors and be able to connect with each other in those ways. And just to highlight, you all filled out a very long LEAP application where we asked you where you felt like you were doing in these skills. And these were all the skills that people were interested in building, whether that's what you filled out on the application or what you shared with me via interview. Overall nonprofit management, I think that every year I ask people, what is the biggest challenge you experience in your organization? And it often is around management and personnel management. And it's not a skill or a training that we're provided. We kind of learn how to be advocates and then get turned into managers. And while those skills can definitely be transferable, there are some things that are missing there, right? And then fiscal management, I hear people are always learning as they go with these things, unless they get like an MBA, and a lot of us don't have the privilege of being able to do that. So these are all the things that folks are wanting to work on, and this is quite limited list. there are many other things that folks are wanting to work on or wanting to build their skills on. I'm curious, is anybody else or are there any other skills that folks are wanting to add to this list, topics that you're wanting to discuss? And I ask this because there certainly are opportunities for us to just come together in a small group and have a much more informal discussion on other topics. I think when I interviewed folks, people were wanting to talk about intersectionality, people were wanting to talk about mental health, people wanted to talk about accessibility in our work. So if there's anything, please let me know. I want to make notes of that and bring it up later on the cohort. Public speaking, yeah. Awesome. Public relations with regard to media, absolutely. Yeah, we will be talking about that, getting comfortable with that. All right. Well, feel free to keep adding, and you're also welcome to email me and say, hey, Marcella, something came up in the group and or in at work, and I'm wondering if I can um, speak with other cohort members about this topic. Vanessa, I'm seeing generative conflict. I love that concept of generative conflict. Vanessa, I don't know if you have a good way of explaining it. I'm still kind of learning about it, but if you want to expand on that, let me know.
Sure. Just trying to learn better about how to address conflict in a way that makes sense and like in a way that um creates like balance and like invites creativity to problem solving.
Mm,
Um
yeah.
think that we kind of learned a little bit about it in my organization, but it's something that I don't feel like I practice yet because I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Do you,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely. I think what I've heard from generative conflict, it's like it's almost first it's like reframing that conflict isn't necessarily a bad thing, but that it can be a tool for learning or a tool to reflect and assess what the way that we're doing things currently and what can we do differently. But I'm no expert, but I'm always open to learning. Yes, which brings me to our next slide on community agreements, which folks are always welcome to add to. These are actually, they've been around for a long time and we're looking to update them. And you'll probably, if you've joined the LinkedIn group, you might have seen them in the LinkedIn group, which Valena, hi Valena, just dropped into the chat. Welcome, Valena. Um, and really helps guide the way that we want folks to see the framework for this group. Excuse me. One of the pieces of the puzzle is that we recognize that all of you bring such important skills to the work, different backgrounds. You come from different parts of the country and from different sectors of the work. And so we really, really want folks to be able to learn from each other. So if I start to see patterns where folks engage in certain ways and say, hey, these are barriers that I'm experiencing, and then I hear someone else say the same thing, I might connect you to if that's something that you're interested in. So as much as I will start to keep my eyes peeled and try to keep folks connected to each other, I hope that folks also feel empowered to connect with each other and learn from each other. On the same note, also hoping for folks to engage with each other and see each other as role models and mentors. Ask questions. You really do have the right to know everything. I think that one of the things that I struggled with early on in the field was I'll just figure it out myself. I'll Google it. I know how to do research. I'll find a toolkit. But I think we can learn so much quickly when we ask the people that we know have that skill already. And I think we say this all the time, right? Like if you have that question, 5 other people, 10 other people might have that question. So even if it's not a fully formulated question, or if it's more of a comment, feel free to bring that to the group. Passion, and I already know there's no scarcity or lack of passion in this group after meeting you all. There might be some burnout and there might be some some vicarious trauma, but we're not underpassioned. So that I know is already here. And then I think a big piece of the puzzle that you all mentioned during your interviews was finding motivation in each other, finding inspiration with each other, to grow within the group, to learn from each other, to help maintain that motivation, right? I think so many of us are maintain our motivation because we're in crisis mode and we're wanting to respond to the various cycles of crisis that happen throughout the day or the week or the year. But I also want us to create a group where we're coexisting in a way that isn't just solely focused on crisis, but also focused on connection and focused on building resilience with each other. And then last but not least, building confidence to move to the next position of leadership if that's something that you are interested in. I've heard folks be like, I'm ready to be a director, but I don't know what it takes, or I'm really interested in executive leadership, but I'm not sure what that takes. Or like me, I'm a manager. I'm always wanting to learn more about management and, of course, learning more about what it takes to be a director. So that's the way I've sort of formulated these community agreements. But if folks have other agreements that you all would like to put on here, please feel free to drop those in the chat or unmute yourselves. One that isn't on here, but that I will just state, is that just as much as we recognize confidentiality and protecting people's stories with the communities we work with, that is the same framework I work from with you all. I say this time and time again, but it's very rare that we get to speak with leaders, women of color, that are experiencing the same issues we are within the workplace. And there is a level of anonymity in talking to people that don't know your community or don't know your leadership team. And I want to keep that anonymity. So if at any point you're wanting to share a more personal story during a webinar or a small group and you don't want that piece of the puzzle recorded, then please by all means let me know and we can stop recording and you can share that with each other. But I will also say we don't share any of these recordings with anyone else outside of the group. This is a closed group just because we know people tend to share very sensitive subjects during the group. And so we don't want that getting to anybody else. All right, so here we are. We're at the LEAP syllabus. I'm just curious if you can raise your hand or drop a line in the chat. Did anyone get a chance to look at the LEAP syllabus, and does anybody have any questions before I start? Just kind of giving a quick rundown. Yeah, a couple people have looked at it. Awesome. So what you're going to see is basically a schedule of events. And so you can always go back to the syllabus. I just had to update the syllabus this morning because one of our presenters let us know that they had to reschedule something. So I will go ahead and talk about that later on just to give folks a reminder. But I've already updated your calendars. I've already updated the syllabus as well. So a couple things about program expectations. Um, Folks are expecting, you've already signed this agreement, but just as a reminder, folks are going to be participating in 2 3-day leap academies. Our very first leap academy is next week, so if you haven't done so already, please register. We're also going to have a series of 6 webinars and then 4 small groups focused on skills development around finances and budgets. So those will be, like I said, they'll be small groups, so your assignments are in the syllabus. I highly recommend folks register for those ahead of time. And then, of course, we have our Pay It Forward project office hours. I'll talk about that a little bit later. The first one is absolutely mandatory, and then the last 2 are kind of like on a case-by-case basis. If you need support, then you're welcome to join. And then there's participation in at least 7 one-on-one coaching sessions. After this, folks will be able to go ahead and schedule their coaching sessions. Your coaches will be reaching out to you, and your coaching assignments are also available in the LEAP folder. So if you're wondering who's your coach and you're not able to find that, please feel free to reach out to me, and I can go ahead and introduce you to your coach as well. Um, Let's see. I just dropped that Google group in the chat, and just to let folks know, that is a Google group. You can email if you have questions to the entire group, and if you email that specific email address, everybody will receive the question or the resource you shared. Last year, what folks used that for in the beginning of the cohort was they shared their principles U assessments or their results, and folks started talking a little bit about where were some places that they scored lowest, where they scored highest, and tried to meet with some folks that scored higher where they scored lower. So that was a good way of getting folks connected and chatting it up with each other. This is something that my professors used to do in college, is we would have like a Leap Fellow buddy. And so if that's something that you're interested in being paired up, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to pair you up with somebody and see if other folks are interested in being paired up. The sort of buddy pairing is just kind of like, hey, like I missed something in the webinar and I wanted to see if like you remembered something differently, or maybe it's somebody that you want to be able to connect with throughout the cohort. So however you'd like to use that, if you'd like to use that, let me know, and people can opt into that or not. Just reach out to me later. Let's see. And I believe Valena has actually dropped the LEAP syllabus in the chat, so thank you for that, Valena. The other thing I will mention as well, in terms of coaching, is that there are some handouts in our Google Drive that folks can go ahead and check out. I'll go ahead and go there already. So, quick, just check in. Did folks have any trouble getting access to the LEAP Cohort 10 materials folder? No troubles. Okay, that's what I like to hear, but if anything comes up, let me know. So what you're going to be able to find in the folder is readings, resources, and assignments. All of your assignments are already in here, and if something comes up that, there's a new assignment that comes up, I will go ahead and email you all ahead of time. But you'll see the Pay It Forward project resources, the guidelines are in there, a timeline to help you figure out your scope of work is in there. All the coaching materials are in there. There will be one particular assignment that your coach will ask you to do, just to kind of get a sense of like, what kind of goals do you want to be working on with your coach? Of course, those can always change. But if folks can send that to their coach ahead of time, that's really helpful to them to be able to prepare ahead of time to participate in coaching you. So, Griselda, there's no required readings actually. These are just kind of like readings that people have shared over the years that I keep in there. So yeah, there's no required readings. Let me backtrack. There's one reading in particular that you'll be asked to do that's focused on working with boards. And so I will send you all a reminder, but that is coming up in the next week or two. And Kenosha will be hosting those small group skills development groups around working with boards. And then I think I mentioned this earlier, is that PDFs of presentations will be available here. This PDF will be available later on today. And then of course, recordings of the presentations, and then your small group assignments. Those are your small group assignments. Just a couple of things in case it's helpful to help you keep organized. I have a lot of Google Drive folders, so I try to color coordinate them. You're always welcome to do that, or star the folder, or add a little shortcut to your drive. So if folks need any kind of tech support with the Google Drive folder, let me know. I'm happy to support you all with that. And then this is the update I had. One of our presenters had to reschedule the finance and budget small group, just the last session. So for small group 1, it was previously on April 16th. It'll now be on April 15th at the same time. And then small group 2, your last session was previously on April 18th and was shifted over to April 17th. And the time for this one did change. It's from 1 to 2 Pacific time, 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern time. So like I said, your calendar invite has been updated, the Zoom invite has been updated, and so has the syllabus. So I'm hoping everywhere has been updated so I don't confuse you about two different dates. All right, and then we're going to get into the Pay It Forward project. I'm really excited because this year we have a bunch of our Pay It Forward projects from last year that have been uploaded to the LEAP website, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And Valena has also dropped the syllabus in the chat, or not the syllabus, the Pay It Forward project guidelines in the chat. And so just to give you a brief overview of what the goals are for this project, it's really about paying forward the knowledge that you are learning about or the knowledge that you've gained both in this cohort, but just throughout your lifetime in the field, and paying it forward to leaders of color in your local community. Back when the Pay It Forward project started, it was the emphasis was really on your local community, but over the years, due to the pandemic, a lot of things switched to being virtual, and so we started to integrate more of the past LEAP fellows into any of the projects that folks are working on so that they can also participate in them if you're doing like a training or a webinar. So I will say it's really focused on supporting leaders of color in building their leadership skills. Um, it's really to be able to encourage them to share their knowledge and to tap into their wisdom and their perspectives on um, supporting the needs of survivors and in various cultural communities. And then, of course, a byproduct of this is often supporting folks in pursuing or securing or retaining positions in leadership in our field. So, of course, we want this project to really be your passion project. Some questions to ask yourself is there a gap somewhere in your community that you want to address? You'll kind of want to assess the needs of communities of color in your local area. And I don't mean like a formal assessment. I just mean like keep your ears to the ground, like be thinking about what have been your experiences in your community and what's been missing. What are some things that people have said like, "Ugh, I haven't been trained on that, or I wish I knew more about that, or I'm really great at this, but this is something that I would like to work on." Maybe you learn this from your colleagues, maybe you learn this from your staff themselves. Maybe you have other partners that you're working with where there are some gaps that they're wanting to fill as well. So as you're participating in all of the training sessions, I really encourage you to be thinking about what do you want to give back to your community? And you'll have opportunities to brainstorm with your coach, and we'll also have more of an opportunity to discuss the projects in the coming months during our office hours sessions near the middle of the cohort. And I will just say you can add your own objective to this if it's not on here and you want to add something of your own, you're welcome to do that. And then a little bit about the Pay It Forward proposal. Before you finalize your project, you'll work on a proposal. And full transparency, we used to just have people submit their project, and I was like, that's not going to work. I need to support people talking through this. I think originally we wanted this to be very independent from the project and really allow people to explore on their own. And as I took on the project, I was like, no, I think we want to do that. We want to collectivize our knowledge. We want to figure out what are other folks in the cohort also interested in. So I share that transparently just because when I hear feedback from other folks, I try to integrate that as much as possible during the cohort, if it's possible. And that was one of those things where I was like, no, let's have folks submit a proposal to get kind of like folks who are wanting a temp check, like what, is this topic okay? Or does the purpose of my project align with what the objectives are? So this is what the proposal will look like. It's very brief. I don't expect even a full page. It can be 3 to 5 sentences about just a brief description of the project topic and purpose, the audience you intend to reach, and how you'll go ahead and do outreach to invite them to participate. Are you going to send out a newsletter and invite all of your partners and all of your staff and all of the people you know through the work that you do, and maybe even friends. You'll also want to talk about um, the mode in which you'll distribute your knowledge. So, are you wanting to do something online? Are you going to want to do some sort of workshop in person? Do you want to create um, a guidebook that you'll share via a webinar? So, a lot of people do webinars, but I'll share some other examples that might be outside of that. And then some approximate dates that you'll plan to share your project with your community. And I say approximate dates just because this proposal is due in September, but the project itself is due November 15th. And I will just note that our very last activity with each other is Leap Academy 2, and that'll be the first week of September. So your proposal is due after the academy is over, and then your project is due after that. So I'll be available to folks throughout that time. And it's maybe selfishly, I just like to keep you all around a little bit longer and connect with you all. But I also just want to give you time to work on that once you're done with the cohort, so that you're not like attending all these meetings and then also having to work on your project. So you get those 2 months afterward, just to kind of give you a sense of what that looks like. Okay. And then just a couple examples of what Pay It Forward projects have been. Um, like I said, a lot of in-person trainings and webinars. People have written proposals for a program. I will just a note on that. You'll want to think about, if you're writing a proposal for a program, then how does that, like in the moment, pay it forward to your community? So are you going to be able to talk about how that proposal was written, so that in that moment you're able to sort of educate or train or provide a skill to your immediate community? Same with the other ones I'm showing, a guidebook or a book or a zine. A zine is more of like an informal magazine. It really started in the punk movement, where people were trying to um, create knowledge that wasn't so like highfalutin academic and make it much more visual and available to folks in the community. That's a great question, Reese. Is the project representative of LEAP, or would it be representative of our respective organizations? I would say it's respective of you first and foremost. We don't like put the LEAP name on it. We can like go ahead and post it on our website so that other LEAP fellows and other folks uh can access it, but it's not something that we call our own, or that your organization calls their own. I will say that people tend to have conversations with their executive leadership about this, or their manager, um, and because they might be doing a training with their staff, and so then you're doing it under the representation of your organization, but you might also be inviting other community members. So it kind of depends on like who your audience is, and the mode of communication that you're utilizing to do outreach to people. So like if you're using your organization's name to invite people to it, then it ends up being representative of your organization, but that's not mandatory. It's really up to you as a fellow. But yeah, this is your passion project. We can support you in developing it, but it's not something that we take as our own. We definitely uplift it and want to share it with other folks, but it's yours. Yeah. Does that answer your question, Reese? Okay. Did anyone get more confused by that response, or does anybody have any questions? Okay. And then Valena dropped a link in the chat to last year Cohort 9's Pay It Forward project. So I know sometimes people want to visualize or understand what other people have created. So I definitely recommend checking that out. There's several videos and a guidebook in there that folks can take a look at. Okay, now to get into the LEAP podcast and blogs. Like I said, one of my favorite parts about this group is that I get to uplift the work that you all do. It's one way that I get to be creative with you all in terms of uplifting stories. Um, so just want to get a sense of, has anyone ever participated in a podcast whether you were a guest or a host, or maybe you helped do some writing, or maybe you helped in the production in some way. So let me pull up the poll question real quick here. Do, do, do. Okay. Deborah's saying not at all. Are you saying not at all because you definitely haven't done it, or are you like, I don't want my voice out there? Because I know people that are like, that makes me nervous.
I've never
It's
done one, so that
never
makes me
done.
nervous thinking about it. So
Yeah. Yes. Understandable. When I found out I was going to be the host of the podcast, I was like, me? The voice of the podcast? I don't know about all that. So, um, I completely understand. And now it's really fun. One of my favorite things to work on in the project. But now that I love doing this poll just because every year more people say yes, they've been part of a podcast. So that's really exciting. Kashan is excited too. Um, that's great. Um, yeah, I'm curious if other folks are interested and being part of the podcast. I will just say I have 2 more episodes to complete, and I'll talk a little bit more about my podcast frame or process or format. So I typically, if folks are interested in participating in the podcast, we'll do kind of like an informal interview just to identify interests and themes and what stories you'd be comfortable with sharing in the podcast. Um, just because it is a podcast so focused on your work in a really intimate way. And so I just want to make sure, one, I'm highlighting something that you're interested in talking about, and two, that you're comfortable with the stories that you'll be sharing on the podcast, and that you're comfortable with other colleagues and leaders in the field hearing what you have to say. Because we have some stories that people have shared that have been from a place of trauma, either workplace trauma or trauma outside of the workplace. And so I want to be able to hold that really delicately and make sure that people are okay with that being out there forever. So that's really the main purpose of the pre-interview. And then once I've done that interview and we've confirmed this is the topic folks want to talk about with me, I will provide some framing questions. I will write that up and share that with folks ahead of time. And then we'll have a prep meeting, sort of like a tech meeting where we talk about what you need. And it's very informal, right? So you don't need to have a podcast mic. All you need is a phone that records your voice, and we'll hop on Zoom, and we'll process the recording and go through a little interview. So it's usually about an hour to an hour and a half of an interview once we get to that point, once we get to the recording session. And then once that's completed, we will get into production with the LEAP team. So fortunately, I do have a podcast producer that supports me in helping tell the story with sound. So um, I'm excited to be able to release the next season. Thank you, Valena. Valena went ahead and dropped the podcast in the chat in case folks are interested. I'm seeing Deborah says, perhaps it would be interested. I'm not opposed to it in any way outside of the box for sure. Yes. Yes. And so I also will say, if we do the interview and you're like, I don't want that up, I don't want that out there, you can always let me know that. And I I will not be upset. It will be a story you were able to tell. And we'll find another way to get your story told in a more private way if that's what you're interested in. So that's an option for uplifting your stories. And then we also have our LEAP website, and I'm excited because we've been able to post more blogs about the work that folks do and the experiences that people have had. So I'm curious, have people written or published a blog before? Is that something that you might be interested in? And I'm having some trouble for some reason launching the poll, so give me a second here. Oh, it's because I haven't ended the other poll. Let's go ahead and launch it. All right, so curious to see if folks have had the experience of writing a blog or publishing a blog. Yeah. Yeah, it's looking almost even. More people have said no than yes. Almost 50-50 though. And I will just say it's not a requirement for you to write a blog or to participate in a podcast. It's more so an opportunity for you to practice your communication skills and highlighting yourself and telling your own story in a much more creative way. So if folks are interested, feel free to reach out to me and we can set something up. And then let's see. I will talk a little bit about the blog process. Same, very, very similar. I'll do a pre-interview with you to help identify a topic area. I'll share an example of how this has worked in the past. So Alana Brown, who is the former executive director of Sister Circle, I know now, Sylvia, you clearly know her. You're the deputy director there now. And so I interviewed her to hear about her story. She was really interested in talking about her journey to becoming an executive director of a culturally specific organization, specifically focused on providing legal services to Black women survivors in the DC DMV area. And she came from a background as a prosecutor and really wanted to talk about what she saw within that field that inspired her to start her own organization. And so I got to interview her and we co-wrote that blog together. And so that's kind of what that looks like, right? We identify the topic area or the story. I'll develop some questions. You all can respond to those questions. And then I will write that into a blog and provide some feedback. We can review it together. And that review process really is just about like, does this feel like your story? Does this feel like it's being told in your, from your perspective? Does it feel accurate? It's not really like the grammar's wrong or like, it's not that sort of technical. It's more so, does this align with the way that you have experienced the world? And then we will go ahead and finalize it and share it on the LEAP website. There's one process for both the podcast and the blog that I left out. OVW does have to approve everything. So that's what kind of prolongs the process is I do create a lot of content with them. So my project specialist has to review all of that and make sure that everything's approved. So if you're like, Marcella, this is taking me 6 months to get feedback on or to be posted, that's probably why. But yes, that's something that folks can participate in. Now that you've heard a little bit about the blog and podcast process, I'm curious to hear if folks are interested in participating, and in particular, in what ways do you feel most comfortable sharing your leadership journey? Awesome. I'm seeing almost half and half blog or podcast. All right. Well, like I said, this is not a mandatory thing, but if it's something that you're interested in practicing with me, highly recommend just reaching out to me. There'll be various opportunities for folks to reach out to me. And I will say, if you don't participate in a blog or a podcast by the end of the cohort, but you're wanting to wait until after the cohort, that's absolutely fine. I'm also open to working with folks afterwards and uplifting your stories then as well. So it's really never too late. It's one way that I'm able to stay connected to folks even after the cohort has ended. So I will just say that. And then also just curious, what sort of blogs or podcasts are folks listening to? I will actually go ahead and collect whatever you share with me and then share with the group and keep it in the Google Drive. I love hearing what folks are listening to or what folks have been reading, so that we can, yeah, share that with each other. It also gives me ideas for our Leadership Moves podcast. Or are folks like, I don't even have time for podcasts and blogs right now. Cultivating her space. Mostly NPR. Listen to your organization's podcast. Yeah, feel free to plug your organization's podcast. I think I have seen it and it's on my to-do list to listen to. Yeah, Vanessa's sharing This American Life for NPR. Interesting. So NVRDC has a podcast called Traumatize. That is such a great name. That is one thing I'm not good at just on creating is like really captivating and innovative names. Um, yeah, my first was like, okay, traumatized or like traumatized as in like trauma bonding. It could mean so many different things. So definitely makes me want to listen to it. Very cool. I'm seeing, I don't know how to pronounce the name of the podcast, Danielle. CCAW. I'm thinking like cause podcast, but I'm probably saying that wrong. I feel very silly, but duly noted. I'll have to check it out. Nisha's saying I honestly have no time, but I'm always tuned into NPR when driving, and I have an 18-month-old. So when I do have time, I prefer silence. Understandable. Yeah, I will just say now that I know we have some parents on the call with some young babies. A year or two ago, we did have like a parent group where people just talked about being parents and being in the field and what that's been like to balance. So if anyone's interested in that, let me know. I am not a parent, so I host the group, but also um, really facilitate it so you all can speak on that experience. Ashley, I recently started listening to For the Healthy Hose. Spotify has a lot of good options. Awesome. I have not heard of that one. I'm sure it's funny though. And then Danielle, Conference on Crimes Against Women. Okay, got you. Okay. Very cool. I love the diversity in podcast options, so I'm gonna have to check these out eventually. All right, y'all. I'm so glad. Normally we don't have enough as much time for you all to meet with each other. Um, most of the time folks have more questions and want me to clarify other things. So here you all are, all your beautiful faces. Thank you all for sending me your photos. Yeah, and I saw some people sharing this online and just appreciate you all uplifting each other as well. So there's that. And then I have some questions to help guide your conversations with each other. Um, before I even pose these questions, who gets a little bit nervous about getting into a breakout session when they haven't met anybody? I just want to name that. Yeah, because Sean's like, I do. I want to name that because it can be a little nerve-wracking because you're just, you know, bumped into a room with people you haven't met before. So I appreciate your vulnerability in doing that with us. And hopefully over time, people get more and more comfortable with each other. Nisha's saying I only do when I'm the only woman of color. That is something that will never happen in this group. You will never ever be the only woman of color in the group. So yeah, I really appreciate that about this group. All right, so Belena's dropped the questions in the chat, but I will go ahead and list them. Just introduce yourselves. What do you feel like is most important to share about yourself? You know, obviously your name and your pronouns and which part of the country you're coming from or the territories. What's your favorite thing to do when winding down after a challenging work day? What brought you to the LEAP program? And then what do you need from yourself and your cohort mates to feel connected in a virtual setting? This one is really important for me to know as your guide because I'm the one that can perhaps bring that into the group. I hope other folks are able to help me bring whatever that may be into the group. But I hope I'm able to maintain that closeness with each other and that connectedness in some way. So I know you all have trained in virtually in various ways. So if you learn certain things that I may not know about that help you all stay connected, I'd love to learn about that and share that with you all. So those are the questions. Is anybody not ready to go into the breakout session? Do you need a couple seconds? Let me know. Okay. So you are a group of 20 people, and so we're going to get into groups of 4. So there will be a few that will be more than 4 groups. So I will go ahead and start creating those breakout sessions. Actually, let's do yeah, 5 groups. And we will assign automatically. And I'm sorry, y'all, I didn't even say how much time you have. You will get 15 minutes, and then I will kind of come in and out and see if folks need more time. Because we will have about 15 more minutes after that to debrief with each other and share what might help you feel connected in a virtual setting to each other. So before I send you in, I will just say, try to identify one person, at least one person that can share out for the group. And if needed, someone who will write notes to help us remember what was shared. So that is that, y'all. I'm going to go ahead and create the breakout rooms. All right, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you assigned someone that can share back for the group, whether it's about the community agreements, what would help you all feel connected in a virtual setting with each other, or what brought you to the LEAP program, or what you all do when you decide to wind down from a challenging day, a little summary of all of it, whatever you feel like sharing with the group. So let's go with group 1, which I will just list off who's in that group because y'all probably don't know who's group 1. So Ashley, Evelyn, Griselda, Nayeli, and Reese.
I can share. So our group, I'm Nayeli, pronoun she, her, ella. And well, our group was kind of from all over, Washington, D.C., Minnesota, Louisiana, California. And we talked a little bit about just disconnecting at the end of the day. Some of us had a harder time doing that, but like closing the laptop was really important. But things that we did was like watch TV, read, um, stay active, lay in bed and scroll through phones, which is I love that honesty of just like scrolling through the phones. And then I think a lot of us talked about just not receiving that professional development within our own organizations. A little bit about generational gaps between who's managing at a director or higher position versus like where we're at now. And then seeking like a sense of community and more so spaces where women of color or people of color are in so that we can learn and grow from each other or with each other. And then the last part, I think a common theme was the participation. So in order to have effective conversation is really just to participate, but also challenge one another so that we can expand our skills and be engaging. And I think that's it. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything, but that is what our group shared.
Thank you, Nayeli. I love that encouragement to participate. Yes, it really takes all of us to create a group where we get to know each other and learn from each other. And let's see, group 2 had Danielle, Deborah, Kushan, and Lakeisha.
I'm happy to speak for us.
Sure.
I think we all agree none of us want to do this part, but one thing that we all had in common was that what we needed to be able to connect is the smaller group setting and getting to know each other and getting to know faces and names. And I think another takeaway is all of us, except for maybe Lakeisha, was a little nervous about the project at the end. And that's it, unless anyone wants to add anything.
Lakeisha, I know you unmuted yourself, so I don't know if you wanted to say something.
I'll just say that most of us in winding down decided that we didn't want to do anything. And if we did, it was something completely quiet, maybe with a glass of Prosecco or a bath. So we had that in common as well. And just really, all of us were looking for insight and more leadership and wanting to be able to hone our skills more and to become better leaders in our organization. So.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all's honesty about just wanting some peace and quiet and scrolling your phone. I feel like these social media influencers are like, don't do that, it's bad for you. And I'm like, well, it feels good. Maybe I'll stop later. All right, group 3. And also just want to name the worry around the project. Yeah, we will continue to talk about that, so I hope the worry subsides. But yeah, we'll talk more about that. So group 3, we had Corinne, Dawn, Nilda, and Nisha.
Hello. I would say that the 3 ladies, Corinne, Nilda, and Nisha, are amazing already, and I'm so excited for you guys to get to meet them. I was excited about this project, but just hearing them be so vulnerable and honest confirmed that this is going to be an amazing opportunity. Nilda is from Oakland, and she works with sexually exploited youth. And her, like me, in her spare time, sometimes she says she would just like to take a nap. So she needs to just shut off. And she also shared with us her little coin phrase that I really like, so I might use it, is that, she needs from this program, from her and others, is to be respectfully brave. And I am excited to join her in being respectfully brave. Corinne Cross is a wonderful lady, and her name looks like Corinne Williams on here. So she is taking her name back, and we are excited for her to embark on her new chapter of her life. Corinne is starting her own nonprofit, and she is very excited about that. She works at the largest domestic violence shelter in Alaska, and while we like to rest, she enjoys dancing, and so we are willing to help her get on her dance TV show or whatever it is that we all need to come and show out with her. Corinne got her moves, and I am so excited. And the amazing Nisha was also in our group, and Nisha does a very unique job. It's the only one that is like hers, because they represent clients what other legal programs would not take. So I would say that she represents some of the most difficult cases, and she welcomes those. And I don't know how she does it, because she doesn't have much time, and she enjoys taking naps too. She's a new mom with a blended family of 3 children, and sometimes she just has guilty pleasures of watching bad TV shows, and I'm right there with her, because give me a good gossip or a fight, and then I'm gonna turn it off. But it's nice to have sometimes. So that's us in a nutshell. I'm so excited.
Dawn, I just love how you are a hype woman for every single person in your group. Like that. Thank you.
So
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
but Nilda shared that she used to be a cheerleader, and so did I. And I tried to let it go, but it just shows up every day, and I wanted to stop. Oh gosh, I wanted to stop.
Look, you know what? You are taking back the positive parts of cheerleaders, because the cattiness, I used to be a cheerleader too, and it's very embarrassing because I did not like the people that were very mean and lots of bullies. But the piece around hyping people up, I'm here for that. So thank you for that. All right. Let me see. We have group 4, Vanessa, Nell, and Anuse. And also, if I ever say your names wrong, please just stop me in my tracks and let me know.
No worries. It's not an easy name. Mine it's Anushe. And
Anushe.
I've been tasked to share from our group, but now it's a hard act to follow group 3. I feel like I have to start with a cheer or something. But allow me to introduce the members of group 4, which are Vanessa and Nelly. They're both in director position. Vanessa is an associate director. Nelly is entering the ED position as of 2 weeks ago. And so they were both, and like me, they were both attracted to the program to expand on their leadership skill, learn new skills, and hopefully be on a trajectory of growth in their professional career. So a couple interesting thing. Nelly also loves naps, which I think it can be related to Nilda. So we have another cohort person that likes naps. She, like me and like Vanessa, also indulge in what we refer to trash TV, real reality TV particularly, and that's how we unwind. And then Vanessa also likes to read. We have parents amongst our group, so unwinding, it's something that not always comes immediate, but we try to make space for it. And then let me see what else. What I think that's about it for our group, and we're all very excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you all here. So we have our last group, group 5. We have Angela, Joanna, Carla, and Sandy. Who would like to share back?
Okay, I don't think we decided. We just got into sharing, but I'll go ahead and step in. So we are just Joanna and I are in California. Sandy, I forgot what state, but Illinois. And Sandy's doing it. They're the only rape crisis center and serving the county. So I feel for you, Sandy. And then we have Angela from Puerto Rico. So we all just, I think, we've been connected on our reasoning on what we do to unwind. And a lot of us, our kids, our pets, are our reason to kind of be in the moment when we get home. And we also were all brought to the program just because of the interest, just wanting to, be in a community where we can all be ourselves. And I think we all agreed that being in this virtual setting can be great because we are all able to connect from very different spaces, but the challenge can be being present because we can get easily distracted with being virtual. So we all agreed that we need to just be kind to ourselves and really give the attention and the importance of what this program will do for us. And then Angela shared also us being patient with her because Spanish is her first language and the translation of thoughts. And I know that I struggle with that too when I'm translating in Spanish and speaking in Spanish, so it takes us a while. But I think we were all really enjoying the conversation and really getting to know one another. And I will say it was nice to really just be comfortable and be opening up and not feeling that because in other spaces you can feel different.
Yeah, we kind of get to take our suits off here.
Yeah.
If we're, metaphorically, I don't wear a suit
There
to
you
work
go.
though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can definitely resonate with being present in webinar spaces, especially virtually. I know you all are pulled in many, many directions, especially when you're supervising folks and overseeing various different projects. But I hope that this space also helps you set those boundaries because this is maybe the one time that we will ever be able to be with this many women of color leaders across the country. The one time. Fortunately, like for me, I get to do this every year and I'm always sad to see you all go, but I hope that that is at the forefront of your mind so that you can remember to advocate for yourself when someone's saying, well, can you just miss that one time? I hope that you're able to also be listened to in that moment. So if folks need help advocating or practicing a scenario, I'm happy to hop on a call. I need to work on this myself, so working on it with you all is very helpful. Also, apologies, we're going past time. I'm just going to do some announcements real quick, and then folks can head off to whatever it is that you all have to do, because inevitably I know you have lots to do. So just a couple reminders, and Valena will drop some links in the chat as she does. The Leap Academy is next week. It'll be Wednesday through Friday, March 6th through the 8th, from 9 to 2 p.m. Pacific time, 12 to 5 p.m. Eastern time. And then, of course, you have some homework assignments that are due before the Leap Academy. In some ways, it's a leadership development assessment, but really, in some ways, a combination of leadership and personality and the way that you show up in your work. So if you haven't completed this yet, I highly recommend taking this from the perspective of how you operate in your workplace. So you'll complete the assessment. I've received quite a few assessments and a few reflections. So it's 2 different assignments, the assessment from Principals U, and then a reflection on that assessment. And I will just say, people have said, well, I don't actually agree with this assessment. This doesn't align with how I see myself. That is totally fine. You don't need to agree with everything on the assessment. Part of your reflection can say, this was not actually accurate, or it could be, I had an aha moment. I didn't notice that's something, a way that I show up in the work. So I just want to give folks that sort of autonomy. Just because it was in a test doesn't make it true, but it might be a jumping off point for some reflection. Yes, so that is all I've got for you all. I'm going to stay behind in case anybody has any questions, but otherwise, I just appreciate you all for showing up, for being vulnerable, for choosing to be a part of this group and opening up yourselves to learning and to each other. And like I said, I will stay behind if anybody has any questions, but otherwise, that's the end of our orientation, and I will see you all next week.